Jack Howard yawned as he stared at the computer screen. It was 3 a.m., and he was alone in the control room of the Arizona Space Observatory. The only sounds were the hum of equipment and the occasional beep from the monitoring systems. Jack had been an astronomer for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like the readings appearing on his screen. "That can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. The signals coming from the edge of the Kuiper belt showed patterns too regular to be natural. He checked the equipment twice, ran 3 different analysis programs, but the conclusion remained the same. Jack picked up his phone and called Susan Baker. Susan had been his colleague for the past 5 years, and if anyone could make sense of these readings, it was her. Susan arrived 40 minutes later, her blonde hair messy and dark circles under her eyes. She didn't complain about the late hour. When Jack showed her the data, she fell silent. "How long has it been coming in?" she finally asked. "About 4 hours now. It's not random noise, Susan. Look at the pattern." Susan nodded slowly. "No natural phenomenon creates signals like this. This is communication." For the next week, Jack and Susan worked almost nonstop. They recorded the signals, analyzed the patterns, and tried to decipher what they were seeing. When they finally reported their findings to NASA, the response was less than enthusiastic. Space debris reflecting radio waves was the official explanation, or equipment malfunction. But Jack and Susan weren't the only ones who had noticed. Reports came in from observatories in Chile, South Africa, and Japan, all detecting the same unusual signals. NASA could no longer ignore the evidence. 3 weeks after Jack's late-night discovery, the signals changed. They became stronger, clearer, and were now coming from much closer, just beyond the orbit of Mars. The world held its breath as telescopes around the globe focused on that part of space. The ships appeared suddenly. One moment there was nothing. The next, 7 sleek vessels hung in space like silver needles. The largest was about half a mile long, the others roughly the size of aircraft carriers. They moved with impossible grace, defying what humans understood about physics. World leaders scrambled to form a response team. Jack and Susan found themselves summoned to Washington, where a hastily assembled group of scientists, military personnel, and government officials were trying to make sense of the situation. "We've prepared a message," said the NASA director. "Simple mathematical sequences, basic greetings in multiple languages." But before they could send it, the aliens made contact. Screens around the world lit up with the same image. A tall, slender being with pale blue skin and large almond-shaped eyes. "People of Earth," the being said in perfect English, "we are the Velrathi Confederation, an alliance of 17 species from 12 star systems. We have been observing your world for some time and have determined you have reached a sufficient level of development for first contact." The alien introduced himself as Ambassador Zenith. He explained that a diplomatic team would arrive on Earth in 3 days to begin formal relations. The news sparked both excitement and fear across the globe. Military forces went on high alert, religious leaders called for calm, and scientists like Jack and Susan worked around the clock to prepare for the meeting. When the diplomatic shuttle landed on the White House lawn, millions watched the live broadcast. Ambassador Zenith emerged with 4 other aliens, each different in appearance, but sharing the same air of advanced civilization. The aliens brought gifts, devices that could purify water instantly, small energy sources that could power a house for years. But their manner was not friendly so much as indulgent, like adults humoring children. During the first official meeting, Jack noticed how the aliens exchanged glances when humans explained their space program. "You consider yourselves a spacefaring civilization?" Ambassador Zenith asked, his tone making it clear he found the idea amusing. "We've sent probes to the outer planets," the NASA director said proudly. "We have people living in orbit." "How charming," another alien said with what seemed like a smirk. "We crossed the gulf between stars before your ancestors invented the wheel." Jack felt his face grow hot with embarrassment and anger. The Velrathi weren't here as equals. They had already judged humanity and found them wanting. As the meeting ended, Ambassador Zenith made an announcement. The Confederation has classified Earth as a pre-emergent species. We will establish an observation post in your system to monitor your development. It wasn't a request. It was a statement. Humanity had just been patted on the head and told to go play while the grown-ups talked. 1 week after first contact, the Velrathi sent down their assessment team. They arrived in a small shuttle that made no sound as it landed at the newly created Interstellar Relations Center in Colorado. 5 aliens stepped out, led by a tall Velrathi with silver markings on his blue skin. "I am Senior Observer Kalish," he said with a slight bow. "My team will evaluate your planet's resources and capabilities." Olivia Martinez stepped forward to greet them. Just 3 days ago, she had been a diplomat working on trade agreements with Japan. Now she was the first Secretary of Interstellar Relations in human history. "Welcome to Earth," she said with a smile that hid her nervousness. "We've prepared facilities for your team and arranged tours of our major cities and research centers." Beside her stood Navy Captain Frank Miller, chosen to represent Earth's military forces. He was a tall man with short gray hair and a face that revealed nothing of his thoughts. Privately, he disliked how the aliens looked down on humans, but he kept his feelings hidden. The assessment began the next day. The Velrathi team visited power plants, factories, universities, and military bases. They carried small devices that scanned everything they saw. At each location, they asked questions that seemed simple but made humans uncomfortable. Why do you still burn fossil fuels? How have you not solved your climate problems? Your weapons are so destructive yet so primitive. At the Berkeley Physics Laboratory, they watched a demonstration of the latest fusion energy research. The lead scientist proudly explained how they were close to achieving sustainable fusion. "Interesting," said Kalish, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Our youngest children create fusion reactors as learning projects." Dr. Alan Wright, a solar physicist from the National Solar Observatory, was present for this meeting. He had spent his career studying the sun and had developed theories about its unique properties. "Our sun has unusual characteristics compared to other G-type stars," Wright tried to explain. "The magnetic field interactions create energy patterns that..." "All stars function on the same basic principles," interrupted a Velrathi scientist named Jalar. "Your sun is perfectly ordinary. We have cataloged over 12,000 G-type main sequence stars." Wright fell silent, his face red. His research assistant, Diane Peters, placed a hand on his arm. "They don't want to listen," she whispered. "They should," Wright replied quietly. "There's something they're missing." The Velrathi spent little time studying Sol. Their ships took basic readings, but focused mainly on Earth itself. They were more interested in our mineral resources, population centers, and military capabilities. On the 10th day, they presented their initial findings to world leaders. The meeting took place at the United Nations in New York. Ambassador Zenith did most of the talking. "Earth has been classified as a Category 3 development world," he announced. "You have achieved basic industrial capability, but lack fundamental understanding of cosmic principles. Your technology is approximately 800 years behind Confederation standards." He displayed a holographic map of the solar system. "We will establish observation posts on your moon and on Mars. This is for your benefit. We can help guide your development and protect you from less friendly species." There was a murmur in the room. Captain Miller leaned forward. "Protect us? From what?" Ambassador Zenith smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "The galaxy is a dangerous place for young species. Not all civilizations are as benevolent as the Confederation. Some would exploit your resources without offering anything in return." "And what are you offering?" asked Olivia Martinez. "Guidance, protection, limited technology transfers as you prove ready. In exchange, we will establish mining operations in your asteroid belt and outer planets. A fair arrangement." After the meeting, world leaders gathered in private. "They're treating us like a colony," said the president of Brazil. "We have little choice," replied the Chinese premier. "Their technology is far beyond ours." Captain Miller stood with Olivia Martinez in a corner of the room. "This isn't a partnership," he said quietly. "It's a takeover." "I know," she replied. "But what can we do? Their ships could probably destroy our entire military in minutes." Across town, Dr. Wright and Diane Peters worked late in a temporary lab set up in a hotel room. They had been analyzing data from the sun for days, comparing it with the brief scans the Velrathi had taken. "They didn't even look properly," Wright muttered. "They assumed our sun is like every other G-type star they've seen." "But it's not?" Diane asked. Wright pulled up a series of charts on his tablet. Dr. Alan Wright sat in the basement of his home, surrounded by computers and scientific equipment he had borrowed from the lab. Official channels were now monitored by Velrathi observers, so he and his team had moved their research to this makeshift setup. Diane Peters worked beside him, analyzing data on a laptop. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a graph on her screen. The last 3 major solar flares all had the same unusual gamma radiation spike. Wright nodded. "And here's what we got from the scans of the Velrathi ships." He pulled up another image. "See the frequency their shields operate on. There's a gap right where our sun's unique emissions would hit hardest." For 3 weeks, Wright's small team had been working in secret. They had recruited Jack Howard and Susan Baker, the astronomers who had first detected the Velrathi, along with a few trusted colleagues. Together, they studied both the sun and whatever they could learn about Velrathi technology. "They think they know everything," Wright said, rubbing his tired eyes. "That's their weakness. They've seen thousands of stars like our sun, so they assume ours works the same way." "But it doesn't," Jack said. "The magnetic field interactions are different." "Exactly. And those differences create radiation patterns that their standard shields aren't designed to handle." Upstairs, Wright's wife called down that dinner was ready. As the team took a break to eat, they watched the news. The situation with the Velrathi was getting worse. The aliens had begun establishing bases on the Moon and Mars as promised. They had also started mining operations in the asteroid belt, but their demands were growing. They now wanted access to certain areas on Earth, places rich in rare minerals. When governments hesitated, the Velrathi suggested this reluctance might make them reconsider their protection agreement. "They're becoming more aggressive," Susan noted as they watched footage of a Velrathi ship hovering over a mining site in Africa. "They think we can't stop them," Frank Miller said. The Navy captain had joined their secret group a week ago, bringing valuable intelligence about military responses being planned. "And can we?" Diane asked quietly. No one answered. The truth was, Earth's weapons seemed useless against Velrathi technology. In a demonstration, a small alien scout ship had easily avoided missiles and energy weapons during a friendly exercise. After dinner, they returned to work. Wright had a theory he wanted to test. The sun was entering an active phase of its cycle, with increased sunspot activity predicted in the coming weeks. "If I'm right," he explained, "we'll see a major coronal mass ejection soon. The Velrathi ships are positioned between Earth and the sun. They'd be right in the path of it." "Could it hurt them?" Miller asked. "Their shields are designed for standard solar radiation, but our sun's emissions during big events contain unusual energy patterns. I don't think their shields can handle it." "Should we warn them?" Susan asked. Wright hesitated. "We've tried. They don't listen. They think we're primitive and don't understand our own star." Meanwhile, Olivia Martinez was dealing with the Velrathi in an official capacity. The aliens had requested a meeting at their embassy, a structure they had built in just 3 days on land outside Washington, D.C. Secretary Martinez, Ambassador Zenith said with his usual condescending smile, "We have prepared what we call a development agreement for Earth." He showed her a document filled with technical language and complex terms. As she read, her heart sank. The agreement would essentially give the Velrathi control over large portions of Earth's resources in exchange for protection and technological guidance. "This is very one-sided," she said carefully. "That's a matter of perspective," Zenith replied. "We're offering knowledge thousands of years beyond yours. Without our protection, other species might treat you far worse." "We need time to consider this," Olivia said. "Of course," Zenith said smoothly. "You have one Earth week. After that, we will have to reassess our relationship." When she left the embassy, Olivia found Captain Miller waiting in her car. "How bad is it?" he asked as they drove away. "Very. They want control of our mineral resources, restricted zones where only they can operate, and authority to veto any space development that they don't approve of." "Colonization by another name," Miller said grimly. "Yes, and I think they're getting impatient. If we refuse—" "I have something to show you," Miller interrupted. "There are people you need to meet." That night, Olivia Martinez was brought to Alan Wright's home. The scientist explained his theory about the sun and the potential vulnerability in Velrathi shields. 3 days after Olivia Martinez met with Dr. Wright's team, the Velrathi showed their first real display of force. It happened when the International Space Station refused to allow Velrathi observers on board, citing safety protocols. The aliens didn't argue. A small scout ship simply approached the station and sent out a pulse of energy. All communications from the ISS went silent. Power systems flickered. For 6 terrifying minutes, the 12 astronauts inside thought they might die as life support systems struggled to function. Then, just as suddenly, everything came back online. A message from the Velrathi ship followed. A small demonstration. "Next time, we may not restore your systems." The incident changed everything. World leaders who had been hesitant now feared open conflict. Military forces were placed on high alert, though everyone knew Earth weapons would be useless against Velrathi technology. Captain Frank Miller received new orders. His ship, the American Spirit, was one of 3 space vessels equipped with the latest defense systems. They were to position themselves near Earth's orbit, ready to act if needed, though what they could actually do remained unclear. "It's a suicide mission," Miller told his crew honestly, "but we need to show we won't just surrender." In Dr. Wright's makeshift lab, the team worked around the clock. Solar activity was increasing exactly as predicted. Massive sunspot groups were forming. Energy was building up in the sun's magnetic field. "The biggest flare will come within 48 hours, Wright told Olivia Martinez during a secure video call. "When it does, it will be at least 3 times stronger than anything in recorded history." "And you're sure the Velrathi ships will be vulnerable?" she asked. "Their shields are designed for standard cosmic radiation and weapons fire. This will be different. Gamma rays, X-rays, and high-energy particles in combinations their systems aren't prepared for." Olivia nodded grimly. "We need to protect our own infrastructure. If this is as big as you say, it could damage our systems too." "We've already alerted key agencies using code words," Diane Peters said, stepping into view of the camera. "Power grids are being prepared. Communications networks will switch to hardened backups. It's not perfect, but we've had decades of experience protecting ourselves from solar storms." Later that day, Ambassador Zenith requested an urgent meeting with Earth's United Response Committee, the group formed to deal with the aliens. His tone had changed from condescending to threatening. "Your time to accept our development agreement has expired," he announced. "The Confederation has decided Earth requires more direct intervention. For your own protection, of course." "What does that mean exactly?" Olivia asked, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Velrathi ships will establish control zones in your orbit. Strategic locations on your planet will be temporarily occupied. Your military forces will stand down." "And if we refuse?" asked the French representative. Ambassador Zenith smiled coldly. "Then we cannot guarantee your safety from other threats. The galaxy is dangerous for primitive worlds." As the meeting ended, Dr. Wright contacted Olivia through a secure channel. "It's happening," he said urgently. "The solar flare. It's starting now, much bigger than even I predicted." "But you said 48 hours," she replied, confused. "The sun doesn't follow our schedules. This is massive. The readings are off the charts." Olivia immediately called Captain Miller. "Get your ship behind Earth's shadow. Now." Miller didn't question the order. The American Spirit and its sister ships moved to position themselves in Earth's protective shadow. Velrathi vessels, however, remained in their positions, many directly facing the sun. Dr. Wright and his team gathered around their equipment, watching as the sun's activity spiked dramatically. A massive bulge appeared on the sun's surface, then erupted with blinding light. "That's it," Wright whispered. "The biggest coronal mass ejection in human history." Diane checked her instruments. Radiation levels are already 20 times normal. And the main wave hasn't even hit yet. "How long?" Jack Howard asked. 8 minutes, Wright replied. "Just 8 minutes until it reaches the Velrathi ships." In space, the aliens had noticed the solar event but showed no concern. Their sensors detected the rising radiation, but their experience with thousands of similar stars told them their shields would easily handle it. Senior observer Kalish was on the Velrathi flagship when an officer reported the solar activity. "Should we reposition, sir?" the officer asked. "Unnecessary," Kalish replied dismissively. "Our shields are designed to withstand supernovas at close range. A minor flare from a standard G-type star is hardly worth noting." 8 minutes after the solar flare erupted, the first wave hit the Velrathi ships. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Their shields glowed slightly but held firm. On Earth, Dr. Wright watched the readings with growing concern. "Maybe I was wrong," he said quietly. Then, 30 seconds later, the main wave arrived. This wasn't just radiation and particles. It was a tsunami of energy in patterns unique to Earth's sun. The Velrathi shields flared bright blue, then purple, then a strange green color never seen before. "Their shields are failing," Diane said, pointing to her monitor. "The energy signatures are fluctuating wildly." In space, alarms blared across the Velrathi fleet. Systems began shutting down. Shield generators overheated. The smaller scout ships were hit hardest. 3 of them went completely dark, drifting helplessly in orbit. On the flagship, senior observer Kalish stared in disbelief as warning lights flashed across control panels. "Impossible," he said. "Our shields should withstand this easily." "Sir," a technician called out, "this radiation contains patterns we've never encountered before. The wavelengths are shifting in ways our systems can't compensate for." Another officer shouted, "Main power down to 40%. Backup systems failing." Kalish struggled to understand what was happening. How could a simple G-type star produce radiation that could penetrate their advanced shields? His species had traveled between stars for 10,000 years. They had faced black holes and neutron stars. Yet here they were, being crippled by a sun that should have been thoroughly ordinary. On Earth, the solar storm hit with tremendous force. But humans had prepared for this moment. Power grids switched to protected modes. Satellite systems went into safe hibernation. There were outages and damage, but nothing catastrophic. Humanity had lived under this sun for thousands of years and had learned to respect its power. In the command center, Olivia Martinez received reports from around the world. There was damage, but far less than there could have been. Their preparations had worked. "Captain Miller, what's the status of the Velrathi ships?" she asked over the secure line. "They're in trouble," Miller replied, his voice tense with excitement. "The smaller vessels are completely dead in space. The flagship is struggling. Their shields are failing, and they're venting some kind of plasma from their engine sections." Dr. Wright and his team watched with a mixture of relief and awe as their predictions came true. The sun's fury was even greater than they had calculated. Instruments across the globe recorded the most powerful solar event in human history. "The gamma-ray burst is off the charts," Jack Howard reported. And the magnetic field disruption is creating particle effects I've never seen before. For 6 hours, the solar storm battered Earth and the alien ships, human infrastructure, designed with solar events in mind, weathered the storm relatively well. The Velrathi vessels did not. By the time the worst had passed, the alien fleet was in crisis. 5 of their smaller ships were completely disabled, drifting lifelessly in orbit. The flagship and 1 other large vessel maintained minimal power, but had lost weapons, propulsion, and most of their shield capability. Olivia Martinez called an emergency meeting of world leaders. The balance of power had suddenly shifted. They're vulnerable, she explained. Their shields were designed for what they thought was standard solar radiation. They'd never bothered to study our sun's unique properties because they assumed all G-type stars behaved the same way. Can they repair their ships? The British Prime Minister asked. Eventually, yes, Captain Miller answered. But it will take time. Right now, they're asking for help. A murmur ran through the room. The Velrathi, who had looked down on humanity as primitive, were now asking for assistance. What should we do? Asked the Chinese premier. Olivia looked around the table. I suggest we help them, on our terms. Within hours, human rescue ships approached the damaged Velrathi vessels. The American Spirit led the mission, with Captain Miller in command. This is Captain Frank Miller of Earth. He broadcast to the Velrathi flagship. We're prepared to offer assistance. There was a long pause before Senior Observer Kalish responded, his voice notably lacking its usual condescension. Your offer is appreciated. We have injured crew members and failing life support systems. We'll dock and provide medical assistance and emergency power, Miller replied. In return, we expect to open new diplomatic discussions. Equal ones this time. Another pause, longer than the first. Agreed, Kalish finally said. As human ships connected with the damaged alien vessels, Dr. Wright sat back in his chair and looked at his team. 2 days after the solar event, Earth looked very different. Humans and Velrathi worked side by side, repairing damaged ships and systems. The aliens were no longer dismissive but curious, even respectful. Senior Observer Kalish met with Olivia Martinez in a conference room aboard the American Spirit. Captain Miller and Dr. Wright were also present. The alien leader's usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something like humility. I must acknowledge that we underestimated your species, Kalish said. His voice was steady, but it clearly pained him to admit this. And we failed to properly study your star. You assumed all G-type stars behave the same way, Dr. Wright said. But ours has unique magnetic field properties that create unusual radiation patterns during major events. Kalish nodded slowly. A mistake that nearly cost us our lives. Our database of over 12,000 similar stars led us to believe we understood all variations. We were wrong. Olivia leaned forward. Now that we've helped save your crew and ships, let's discuss a new relationship between our peoples. One based on mutual respect. The negotiations lasted for days. The Velrathi were in a weak position, with their fleet damaged and their reputation among the Confederation at risk. If word spread that primitive humans had saved them from a simple solar flare, their standing would suffer greatly. But Kalish proved wiser than expected. Rather than hiding the truth, he embraced it. Your understanding of your own star is impressive, he told Dr. Wright during a private meeting. Few species develop such detailed knowledge of their local stellar conditions before achieving interstellar travel. Wright smiled. When you live under a star for thousands of years, you learn to respect its power. We've been studying solar flares since the 1800s. My scientists are eager to learn from you, Kalish admitted. This event has revealed gaps in our understanding of stellar physics. Across Earth, the attitude toward the aliens changed as well. Fear and resentment gave way to cautious optimism. Working together to repair the damaged ships had shown that cooperation was possible. In orbit, human engineers marveled at Velrathi technology, while alien scientists expressed surprise at human ingenuity. The humans lacked advanced materials, but made up for it with creative solutions. You designed your satellites with solar storms in mind, a Velrathi engineer told Susan Baker as they worked on communication systems. Simple but effective protection that we never considered necessary. We had to, Susan replied. One bad solar storm could set our civilization back decades. We learned to prepare. The flagship's main computer core had been severely damaged. Velrathi systems were designed to handle standard radiation, but had no protection against the unique particle patterns produced by Earth's sun. Human scientists helped design new shielding based on technology used in Earth's deep space probes. A week after the solar event, the Velrathi called a meeting with Earth's leaders. Ambassador Zenith had been replaced by Kalash, who now held the title of High Envoy. The Confederation has reassessed Earth's classification, he announced. You are now designated as an exceptional emergent species, with specialized knowledge valuable to interstellar society. Murmurs spread through the room. This was a dramatic change from their previous pre-emergent status. What does that mean in practical terms? Olivia asked. It means we offer true partnership, not guidance, Kalash explained. Joint scientific missions, fair trade agreements, cultural exchange. And most importantly, we acknowledge Earth's sovereignty. The development agreement was torn up. In its place came a new treaty, one that treated humans as equals. The Velrathi would still establish bases in the solar system, but as guests, not rulers. Dr. Wright's team gained celebrity status overnight. Their understanding of solar physics had saved humanity from potential subjugation. Scientists from around the world flocked to their lab, eager to contribute to the new field of comparative stellar physics. Diane Peters led a joint human-Velrathi research project studying the unique properties of Earth's sun. The aliens brought advanced equipment, while the humans provided their deep understanding of Sol's behavior patterns. What still puzzles me, Diane said to a Velrathi scientist as they worked together, is why our sun is different from others of its type. The alien tilted his head. Perhaps it isn't. Perhaps the others have similar properties that we never noticed because we assumed we knew everything about them. This simple observation led to a breakthrough. Using Velrathi star charts combined with human analysis methods, they discovered that at least 15% of similar stars likely. 6 months after the great solar event, Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Human ships now traveled beyond the orbit of Pluto, equipped with a combination of Earth and Velrathi technology. The fear of alien invasion had been replaced by excitement about humanity's new place in the galaxy. Jack Howard stood on the bridge of the Explorer 1, the first human ship designed for interstellar travel. Through the viewport, he could see the blue-green planet of the Velrathi homeworld growing larger as they approached. Nervous? Susan Baker asked, standing beside him. She had been chosen as his co-commander for this historic mission. A little, Jack admitted. First humans to visit another star system. Hard not to be. A message came through from Velrathi Space Control, granting them permission to enter orbit. The alien controller's voice held none of the condescension they had first encountered 6 months ago. Instead, there was respect, even a hint of excitement. On Earth, Olivia Martinez watched the mission's progress from the new Interstellar Relations Center. The building now housed representatives from 3 different alien civilizations, all eager to establish relations with the species that had impressed the mighty Velrathi Confederation. Quite a change from our first contact, Captain Miller said, now promoted to Admiral and head of Earth's new Space Defense Force. They laughed at us then, Olivia replied with a smile. Now they're studying our methods and technologies. The greatest change had come in the scientific community. Dr. Alan Wright and Diane Peters had become the leaders of the new Stellar Physics Institute, where scientists from Earth and 12 alien worlds work together to understand the unique properties of different stars. Our biggest mistake, a Velrathi scientist had told Wright, was believing we had categorized and understood all star types. Your sun taught us that individual stars can have unique properties that don't fit our neat classifications. Wright's research had led to breakthroughs in shield technology. By studying how Earth's sun produced its unusual radiation patterns, they had developed new types of protection that could withstand not just solar flares, but also many types of energy weapons. The Velrathi had been quick to adopt these improvements. Their ships now carried Sol-patterned shields, named after Earth's sun. What had once nearly destroyed their fleet had become their greatest defensive asset. Diane Peters led a team that traveled between star systems, studying suns with properties similar to Sol. They discovered that nearly 20% of all stars had unique characteristics that the Confederation had overlooked in their rush to categorize the galaxy. On the Velrathi homeworld, Jack and Susan were welcomed as honored guests. They were the first humans most Velrathi had ever seen in person. Children gathered to stare at the visitors from the world with the special sun. "We hear your star tried to kill us," one young Velrathi said innocently. Jack laughed. "Not exactly. We just understood our sun better than your people did." The Confederation Council had officially changed Earth's status in the Galactic Registry. Humans were now classified as solar specialists, a designation usually reserved for species with thousands of years of interstellar experience. The most remarkable thing, High Envoy Kalish told a gathering of Confederation leaders, is not that they survived under such a volatile star, but that they turned their understanding of it into their greatest strength. Back on Earth, schools now taught children about humanity's place in the galaxy. The old fears of alien invasion had been replaced by excitement about new possibilities. The first Velrathi exchange students attended human universities, while young humans prepared to study on alien worlds. Dr. Wright stood in his office, looking at a new image on his wall, a picture of Earth's sun taken with Velrathi technology, showing energy patterns invisible to human instruments. Beside it hung his old hand-drawn diagrams predicting those same patterns. "Not bad for a primitive species," Diane said as she entered the room. Wright smiled. "They thought they knew everything. That was their weakness." "And our strength?" she asked. "We lived under our sun for thousands of years. We respected its power. We studied it even though we couldn't touch it or control it." He looked at the image again. "Sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing how much you don't know." On the Confederation capital world, a new monument was being built, a replica of Earth's sun, with a plaque that read, "In honor of the human species who taught the Confederation that knowledge can be found in the most unexpected places."